shirt am I wearing today?
Oh, nice.
It says old school.
It's great.
But yeah, it's been fantastic. Lynn and I were talking about the goals of the summit, and we're just kind of rehashing what we were trying to get out of it. We were looking to get about 200 teachers, and to give them some experiences that they could take back to their classrooms and be able to use in their practice. So right now our registration is over 700, and I think a large majority of our sessions have been spot on. They've been fantastic. So I think our teachers have gotten what they needed, or and things that they can use. I hope that that's what happened. And also, we wanted to build community. So I put in the chat a little while ago, and I'll probably put it up a minute ago, in another minute, the link to the CSTA. So we encourage all of you all to join CSTA, and
Yes.
and
Well,
network with each other.
Yeah, and you, as having registered for this summit, are now part of the Constellations community, the CS4 Georgia community, in collaboration with Georgia DOE and the CSTA community as well. So when Brian says we're trying to build community, we are trying to build community. And we're also talking about follow-ups with you, perhaps 1 or 2 day type of summit or workshop throughout the school year, but also, continual follow-ups with you so that we support you and in the best way possible. And, right now, it's looking like our work here at the Constellation Center, and I believe perhaps at the Georgia DOE as well, our work will continue virtually. We are going to continue supporting teachers through distance platforms as best as we can. It is the right thing to do right now for everyone's safety and health. And but we're getting better at it every day, thanks to you. Thanks to you. And we welcome your feedback, your suggestions. Let us know what is working, what we're doing well, and what we should be doing to improve on our work together with you. We want to support you in every way we can, the best way that we can. So I'm looking forward to our continued strategic planning, Brian.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Like I said, we can't have something like this and not intentionally build upon it. So
Correct.
I'm looking forward to that opportunity to do that.
Correct. So I have a couple of announcements. I just want to give a shout out again to the Constellations Fellows. If you have not had a chance to meet them these last 2 days, please reach out to them directly. Direct message them, Yolanda Payne, Sababu Barashango, and Terry Foster. They are just superb human beings as well. Connect with them, get to know them. They care about teachers, and that's why they're at the Constellation Center. So also, a couple of them are going to be presenting later this morning. Don't miss their session if you get a chance to go to their session. I believe it's at 10 or at 10, and you should hop in that session if you have a chance to. We have a great program for you today. A series of guest speakers, just phenomenal guest speakers today, and also panels. Don't miss our panels too. And a huge shout out to all of our content session presenters. They've worked hard on their presentations. They're planning to make it interactive. It has been a pleasure to work with all of the presenters throughout the summit. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for presenting at this summit.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, all the sessions have been phenomenal, and the presenters have been exceptional. They've been professional. They've been spot on as far as their information. I'm deeply gratified.
I also want to remind folks that if you need closed captioning, we will have closed captioning options for all of the sessions or presentations on the stage and for our panel sessions. And there's a link that is pinned at the top of the chat. You click on that link and it will open up a separate window for closed captioning. Please let us know if you have problems with that link. Brian, do you have anything to say? I just have one more thing to say, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to help kick us off as well.
No, go right ahead. I'm excited and ready to get into this day. I know this upcoming panel, I'm excited to hear it. So,
well, I just wanted to share with you that I have been getting up every morning and preparing every day for the summit. And like I said this morning, I was filled with emotions, good emotions. And so first I want to say, even after this summit, please feel free to reach out to me during the summit and afterward to stay connected. I do my best with email. I'm happy to give out my mobile, and I'm on Twitter and I'm on LinkedIn. So you can connect with me, several different ways. But I also wanted to share that every morning I've been waking up and I've been reading poems by Maya Angelou, because I feel like she's her words have been able to inspire me. And one of the best phrases that has stuck in my mind during these last few weeks of turmoil and, also the pandemic is, we are more alike than unalike. And I truly believe that once we get past our own biases and our own understanding of different situations, that we are truly more alike than unalike. So that's how I've been able to, that's how I've wanted to start my days with all of you here at the summit. And with that,
thank you, Lynn.
And with that, I'm super excited for today's for this morning's guest speakers. This is a panel that just like almost organically came together. We're going to bring on Hal Speed, Jeremy Keeshin, and Jannie Fernandez. And I will introduce them once they're on camera. And Brian, please stay on while we introduce them, and then we'll get that started in just a few seconds here. Here they come. Good morning.
Hey, Hal.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy.
Hello.
Good morning. Do we have Jannie? It'll just take a few seconds here. Let me see.
She's in the back.
Okay. How are both of you doing so far?
Yeah, doing good this morning.
Good. Looking forward to the panel.
Yeah. So we have been working with the attendees for the last couple of days. I think Jannie needs to share. Jannie, you need to share your audio and video. Sometimes there's a little lag. So Hal and Jeremy, we've been working and meeting teachers all day long, Monday and Tuesday. And today we expect, we have another packed agenda for today. We've met teachers all across Georgia, but also from across the country: California, Illinois, New York, Wisconsin, and if I missed anyone out there, please shout out in the chat, call me out, because there's been representation from multiple states and also several different countries too, right, Brian? I think.
Yeah, we have folks from Argentina, from Canada, from Netherlands.
Wow.
All right, so we're just gonna give it another few seconds here. Oh, Maryland and Oregon. And I think what we can do is maybe do some quick introductions. Would that be okay? Actually, I'm just going to let you all do your introductions, and then we'll bring Jannie on, and then she can do her introduction as well. But first, can I say that I met Hal, gosh, maybe 7 or 8 years ago. It must have been that long, maybe even longer than that. When I met Hal, he said, "Oh yeah, I'm from Texas," and I was like, "Oh, I'm from Texas too." and then I said, "Well, you know, I lived in El Paso for almost 28 years." He's like, "That's not Texas." But I'm just kidding. No, you didn't. It is still Texas, but it was. But it was great meeting Hal. Hal has done some fantastic, phenomenal job, not just in Texas, but for the entire CSED community. So I'm really happy and pleased that he's on with us this morning. I must admit, Jeremy, probably shortly after that, I think I've known you for at least 7 years, maybe a little bit longer. Your whole entire story, how you started CodeHS, is just inspiring, Jeremy. And what you and your entire team have been able to accomplish is just amazing. So thank you for being on with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting us.
Jannie is going to be on stage with us momentarily, but Jannie is another just phenomenal woman in this field too. She is at NC WIT and she directs TECHNOLOchicas and the K-12 Alliance. And I'm just so excited that she's able to join us for our conversation this morning. With that, Hal, I'm going to ask you maybe to.
There she is.
Oh, there's Jannie.
Hi, I'm sorry about that.
Hi, Jannie.
Hi, good morning. Just when you said, and I'm going to introduce, my computer just said, "Oh no, you're not working today." I decided to reboot, so my apologies for the delay.
No worries, Jannie. I just was mentioning that I've known you for quite some time now too, and it's been a pleasure to see how you've developed and grown TECHNOLOchicas, and also with your leadership on the K-12 Alliance at NC WIT. It's just been really wonderful working with you. So thank you for being on with us this morning.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I'm super happy to be here and excited for today's conversation.
So Brian and I have been doing this every morning, and what we're going to do is we're going to continue with your panel, and then Brian's going to come back later on to help us with the Q&A. Does that sound okay?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Brian, thank you so much.
Have a blast, everybody.
Okay, so I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now and what your current projects are. And I was going to ask Hal maybe to help kick us off with that.
Sure. I think when we first met, I was so naive about computer science education, and I was so in awe that you were working at the College Board and you were creating this new AP Computer Science course. And it was just overwhelmed with joy to meet some of these people that were making it happen. Because my background, I came out of the high-tech industry, and I was kind of a super volunteer. So I got into the movement more as a parent. when I just realized how systemic this problem is. Ironically, growing up in Appalachian, Virginia, we had computer programming in the 80s, and it was just a shock to me that in the modern digital age, that local high schools in Austin, Texas, a high-tech city, didn't have access to computer science. And then obviously, as I learned more, learned how widespread this problem is across the country and across the globe. So my background was more in high-tech marketing and strategy, and so I've brought that kind of to the movement. Many of you have heard me say that I think this is a marketing problem, that we're communicating to the decision makers about a different perspective of computer science, that it's not just a niche subject for a few students anymore, it's a foundational subject for all students. And so we need to change those behaviors. So I went on to found Computer Science for Texas as an advocacy organization to promote computer science education across the state. And then I was lucky enough to get a job aligned with my passion, and I'm now the Chief of Global Engagement for the Microbit Educational Foundation. We're a not-for-profit organization that has a small physical computing device to help children learn computer science and computational thinking.
Thanks, Hal. How about Jannie? Can you go next?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So my background is in education, special education. I have a passion for advocacy and working with students with disabilities. But at the same time, I started at NC-WIT about 5 years ago, working at the K-12 Alliance and leading our TECHNOLOchicas program, which is our targeted effort to get more Latinas to pursue careers in computing. Right now, the K-12 Alliance, we see that since we started at NC-WIT at the National Center for Women in Information Technology, the computer science education space has grown so much. There's so many exciting things happening at a national level, and we're currently at the stage of like, what is our next charge? What do we do next? So we want to, as one of our pillars or one of our main focuses at NC-WIT is to convene folks. We're definitely working on convening the national voices of CS education champions to see where those innovation gaps are now, where the opportunity to innovate in this space is at the moment, especially given, uncertain times and uncertain circumstances. So working on figuring out what that next step is for us as a national organization, but also excited to start bringing forward more programming that's specific to other targeted and underserved populations. We have TECHNOLOchicas, as you mentioned, Leon, for Latinas, but we just started our a subcommittee on the advancement of women and Black women and girls in computing. Very excited for what's starting to take shape and see how we support all students in this space. So yeah,
it's fantastic. Thank you, Jannie. All right, Jeremy, you're up.
Great. Well, yeah, thanks for having me here today. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jeremy Keeshin. I'm the CEO and co-founder of CodeHS. And we started CodeHS about 8 years ago. And now since then, we've really built out the platform and site that we have, offering now, I think it's over 60 courses that we have for free that teachers can use, building out the platform to allow students to do their coding, teachers to manage their classroom, manage their grading, manage their data, doing a lot more training. And I think, in response to the pandemic, like we're all virtual now, we've tried to adapt as much to be virtual as possible, including a lot of the trainings that we're doing, but then seeing how can we actually update the features of our site to support virtual learning more, and whether that's with different types of communication tools or data tracking. We opened up our site, our pro version for teachers through the end of this school year, because we know a lot of those tools can be helpful when everyone was rapidly switching to virtual learning. But I'd say in terms of what we're doing now, we're launching some new courses. Hal knows some of those. We have some CodeHS courses for physical computing and with Arduino and with Microbit, some with cybersecurity. We have new CS principles courses. We'll have versions in JavaScript and versions in Python, and working as well on cybersecurity versions of that. And then I think our team is, responding to what's happening, working on responding and saying, how do we do our part in terms of what's happening with all the racial injustice, and what do we do to support, Black teachers, Black students better? And we already have, so many on our site. Our site's reaching, millions of students now. So it's an imperative for our team to do that work too. So, those are some of the projects in the mix at the moment.
Great, thanks for sharing that. I will have to say that we've been working with the Georgia team, the CodeHS Georgia team, for the last year, and they've been super helpful and super supportive too. So you've done something there, Jeremy. Congratulations on that. So the title of this panel is called Empowering Stakeholders to Make CS Education a Priority. Wow. We've been working on that for quite some time, and all of you have been dabbling in doing that in each of your own spaces. So I wanted to start out by asking Jannie a question. First, to more broadly explain what NCWIT is. For those that don't know, just very quickly, explain what NCWIT is, how TECHNOLOchicas falls right under it, and what that does to encourage Latinas to get into CS.
Yeah, absolutely. So NCWIT stands for the National Center for Women in Information Technology. We're a national nonprofit that works across the entire ecosystem, K-12 all the way through the workforce, to increase the meaningful and influential participation of women and girls in computing fields. The way that we do that is by working in alliances. I particularly lead our K-12 alliance, but we have an academic alliance, a workforce alliance, and our affinity alliance, which are other nonprofits that also care about this issue. So within NCWIT, we have programming, but we also aim to support and work in conjunction with other national organizations to move the needle and have gender parity in computer science, K-12 through the workforce. One of the programs, like you mentioned, Lynn, TECHNOLOchicas, is specifically started off as a media campaign. Really, we just want to we want to highlight and increase the visibility of Latina role models or Latinas succeeding in tech, so other young Latinas around the country would get inspired and hope to pursue computing fields. So this is just kind of like one of the programs that brings more Latinas into the NCWIT broader community. But I would say that our umbrella program within NCWIT's K-12 alliances are aspirations in computing community, where we encourage girls all over the country in high school to join our community by applying to a high school award. This high school award, and I can provide additional details and information on specific deadlines, but this award is designed to really embrace the aspirations of girls and women around the country to change the world and to have a positive impact in our society through technology and computing specifically. That's our broader program. At the moment, we have over 16,000 women and girls around the country that are part of this large community. And through this community, we bring opportunities to them that our partner organizations have to offer, whether it's internships, jobs, scholarships, but most importantly, that sense of belonging in this field, which is so needed. Through TECHNOLOchicas, we're really, we started, just like I mentioned, as a media campaign, but we've sort of shifted into more of a programmatic a programmatic model where we have over 450 TECHNOLOchicas ambassadors all over the country that go out into their communities and work with families, with students, with teachers, bringing them hands-on experiences, providing that initial sort of eye-opening experience or awareness that computing is a field that they can and should pursue. And so for the past 5 years, we've been really busy, not just with the media part of it, but really with that hands-on, being on the community, on the ground, working with students directly. So I'm happy to provide, again, more information on how to get engaged with our program with TECHNOLOchicas and with our broader aspirations and computing community.
Yeah, well, I can attest to the importance and the significance, the impactfulness of TECHNOLOchicas, because I've met people who not only are ambassadors, but also have connected with TECHNOLOchicas and have said that it has made a world of difference for them. And they truly appreciate, being connected with them. So that said, Jannie, what do you recommend for teachers, for educators to get involved with NCWIT and learn how to use its resources?
So there's a variety of ways. Like I mentioned, there's a couple of different programs, and Hal reminded me of C4C, our Counselors for Computing program. Mm-hmm. So one of the programs that specifically works with educators, and when we talk about educators, we're not just talking about our computer science teachers, we're talking about informal educators, your coaches, your after-school program leads, of course, our counselors within our schools. So we have our educator award through aspirations, but more specifically, I wanted to touch a little bit on Counselors for Computing, or C4C program, which actually provides training to counselors on how to talk to students and how to advise them on career, on how to pursue computing, to help them feel comfortable talking about computer science as a possible career path or educational path. There's multiple resources that are available for free on our website. All of the resources that we provide are based on social science research. You can order tangible ones that we can ship out to you, but also the importance of being part of a community, a large community, a national network of educators that are there to support and encourage each other and provide as much information and help to one another as they can.
Yeah, so connecting with counselors via C4C at NCWIT is, I think, a great suggestion. We need them in the mix to help us with equity in CS. So thanks for sharing that. My next question is for Jeremy. I'm going to move to you, Jeremy, so we can talk a little bit about what you've done. Really, over the last 8 years, I have seen a shift in the landscape of K-12 CS education with more online platforms and courses, really, that are being offered for, particularly at the high school level. I know that there's, it's K-12, but, I think, for me anyway, it started off at the high school level. Tell us a little bit about, what you've seen in terms of equity access with some of the data that you've been able to collect over the years via CodeHS.
Right. I'd say it has definitely changed a lot. I think the conversations that we've had from our team with teachers, with schools, the ones we were having in 2012, when we're trying to get anyone to use the site and maybe convince them more that they should be teaching computer science or offering that, I'd say so much has changed as even the standards being developed and that becoming a priority, because you talk about, hey, how do you convince more stakeholders that they should prioritize computer science? And I think the development of state standards, which is, varies a lot across the states, from state standards to teacher certification. It varies so much, but that development has allowed it to be prioritized. And so I think, a few of our conversations are, convincing schools that they should offer it, which is maybe what we were having to do 8 years ago. In terms of the equity access component and what we've seen from our own data, so we'll survey students, every now and then to get a sense of, who are we reaching with our site. And now that we've, been lucky enough to reach really millions of students, what we're seeing is that we're reaching a pretty representative sample of students, and most of the students on CodeHS are minority students. It's about half underrepresented minority students. And so we're reaching a really broad group of schools. It's not that CodeHS is just one type of school or just one area. We are mostly working in the US, but we have one course that's in Spanish, so for English language learners, but we're hoping to build that out more. But I would say, that we want to track it. We want to see that we're actually reaching a lot of schools, but we're reaching, big school districts, school districts in cities, rural. We're working with a lot more school districts in Georgia. So we're excited about that. And I think, particularly in Georgia, when we've been able to see, okay, how do we make our courses tailored to the requirements that teachers have? And I know a few of our team members are leading other sessions today at the conference, that really helps. But I think, in terms of the summary on what we've seen with our own data is that we're reaching a pretty representative sample in terms of diverse students, but I don't think we're at, in terms of the gender side, it's still more male than female on CodeHS. And I think that there's an element of when these classes, if they become required and everyone takes a computer science class like you take any of your other class, that's going to be something that helps get it. So, hey, the students who are taking it, it's really reaching more students. So I think that's a little bit what we've seen with our data. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the high level.
Yeah, and so I think we could talk a long time about, the data that you've collected, but I kind of want to narrow it down a little bit now. Let's say, how much of that do you attribute to the digital divide? As we're all trying to promote CS for all,
right.
How have you been able, or what have you, done to mitigate the digital divide? Right. And what do you suggest that can be done to close the gap on the digital divide? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I think we all want the organizations, websites, tools, resources that we're building to be gap closing, but that's not automatic. I think what's happened with the pandemic, shows a lot of the challenges that are there. I think something that helps close the divide is when it is offered through school districts, because there is like a self-selecting bias to certain classes if it's an elective or if it's after school, or those are still things you want to have. But when it's offered as an actual class through the school district, you have the opportunity to reach more students. But with everyone shifting to, and I'm sure this is, we'll see the experience of many of the teachers who are at the conference, but when everything shifts to virtual learning and you have very different guidelines by school, by district, by state, not every student has access to Wi-Fi, access to a computer. The way that I would think about it is whatever you're building on, even if we're talking about just computer science in the blended in-person classroom, you need to have some foundation there to allow it to be successful. And if you're talking about virtual learning with computer science, you need some foundation to allow that to be successful. And if you're pushing into a situation where the students don't reliably have devices or reliably have internet, and you're trying to run a virtual synchronous class like normal, that causes a big problem. And I think in trying to survey and talk with some of the teachers who've used CodeHS, we saw some schools weren't even letting students do anything because not everyone had access. So it's an open question of what they should be doing, but I think it really brings to the forefront that if you're depending on students having access to devices and internet at home, to pursue their virtual learning, you have to have that first to enable it. So I think, we want to make CodeHS a site that can help a lot. And I think having that to be able to have continuous learning where people didn't have to maybe reinvent everything and can do everything through the web, that's great. But if the students didn't have access to the internet, which isn't a given, then that's not something we can do, but I think that's something that you can advocate for, and
Exactly.
you have to start there. And so I know some districts, they kind of very quickly tried to figure out, okay, how do we get students devices? But that people have been scrambling. That's what we.
Yeah. I think the key for me is something you said about all of us being advocates for closing the digital divide, and in every way we can in the work and the space that we're in, because it is very important. And you're right, the physical distancing or social distancing that has been, in place because of the pandemic has raised a lot of those issues and resurfaced those issues. So I think it's incumbent on us to keep it at the top, of people's minds, that this is something we need to fix, and we need to fix it now, particularly for the underserved communities in our nation. So thanks for that, Jeremy. I'm going to turn over to Hal quickly here. And again, Hal, you've been instrumental, and you're an organizer. I know you are. You're a great organizer. You've convened key stakeholders, multiple levels. You've convinced them that CS is important, as an important part of today's education. How did you do it? How do you do it? What have been the best strategies that have helped you be successful in making that happen?
Yeah, for me, I think it starts with passion, right? So internally, I'm motivated that we all know that education is a ticket to a brighter future. And in the digital age, computer science education is that golden ticket. And so families that are in the know to send their kids into the computer science courses. The problem is most families don't know. And so part of our job is to educate the whole system around this paradigm shift away from all these industrial age analog style teaching and learning into the modern digital age and where the economy is going, right? So Mark Andreessen talks about software is eating the world. We've got to think 20 years in advance of that student coming into kindergarten today is not going to enter society for another couple of decades. And what's that world going to look like? And what's the skill set that she's going to need when she graduates into the world? And it seems so fundamental to me that digital technologies, computer science education just becomes that staple of a skill for all people. Not that they're going to grow up and be professional computer scientists, but we teach all these other subjects. Nobody ever says, oh, you shouldn't take biology because you're not going to be a biologist. Or you shouldn't take music class because you're not going to grow up and be a professional musician. We've just accepted that from our legacy of the educational system, that these are standards in a modern day education, but society's changing, and so the education system has to change with that. I think another key part is having an abundance mentality. There are people that want to help. It's just finding the right level of leadership and getting those volunteers together and pointed in the same direction. And so, Lynn, when we first met, I was just volunteering everywhere I could. I was passionate about the cause. And if somebody asked me to help or to volunteer, like at Code.org, I was in the first cohort of CS fundamental facilitators. And so I just volunteered my time to try to help with this cause. Very quickly, I learned, though, that in education, you can only do so much at the local level. You can volunteer all you want with your local school district, but to have any meaningful change, you've got to go to the state level to impact the policies and the regulations that govern education across each of the states. And so that's why I ultimately started Computer Science for Texas and kind of followed the collective impact model as a way to do that.
So what is it about collective impact efforts that can elevate and move things forward in terms of, you know, the CS for all or CS for Texas, or just for, you know, making CS a priority? What is it about collective impact that makes things work?
It's a really good model, and it has a lot of parallels, I think, to what you see in business and industry, where you have a lighthouse or a North Star that you're trying to reach. So what's the ultimate goal that you're trying to get people marching towards? How do you then align the communications and the metrics around that goal? But to me, the most fundamental part is the backbone organization. And when you see collective impact drawn pictorially, you'll see the backbone organization is at the bottom, because I think it's the foundation that everything else builds on. And so finding that collective group of leadership to be able to form the backbone organization to help steer the initiative and unite the troops, so to speak, in a volunteer-led, cause-led kind of initiative that collective impact is so well suited for. And if you look at the literature on collective impact, there's lots of different structures for a backbone organization. So it can be very flexible for a local level, a state level, a national level, and find the right backbone structure that fits your needs. But to me, it really comes down to those leaderships as part of the backbone to help unite people around the cause.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. So I want to just shift gears a little bit in terms of like how we, you know, bring this together. And we have had conversations with a lot of educators, as I'm sure you have also, with, you know, COVID-19 in the mix. Everyone's sort of, you know, had to pivot in each of your efforts, organizations, in our work as well. And then we had these horrible killings of, you know, Black people occur, riots, calls for justice. A lot is happening right now in America, a lot. Some of these things have been happening for hundreds of years. COVID-19, you know, is just really changed our life right now. Many would agree that there are more important things right now to focus on than CS education. These are uncertain times for many people. School leaders are trying to make tough decisions about how to bring school back, you know. How do you convince leaders that CS is still a priority? I mean, what would you say to those who don't agree that CS should still be a part of every child's education? What are, and this is an open question for all of you. What are some of your thoughts about, you know, what can we do? What can we say? How do we keep this at the forefront amidst everything else that's happening? Jeremy, maybe.
Jannie, were you going to say something?
I was going to say that, you know, advocating for CS education shouldn't be as difficult, or shouldn't be like a big ask. It's a great, you know, computer science is an equalizing tool. You empower students to create, to innovate, to be leaders. And it's as simple as, you know, when it comes, not as simple, I'm not suggesting that it's simple by any means, but when it comes to, you know, advocating or speaking to policymakers, you know, you want to stimulate your local economy, develop a local workforce that's going to stay within your state and flourish. That's, you know, that's one of the things that you can use to advocate for computer science education. But most importantly, and I think that what we do, especially through TECHNOLOchicas, and Lynn, you mentioned it earlier, it's like we reach families. I think that once you get those parents also advocating for it and wanting computer science education for their students, or for their own children, it's really powerful. So I would say that as when you put out computer science education as a tool, as an equalizing tool, it's really powerful. So Hal said it's a marketing thing. You have to sell it in a way that people understand that, yes, this is that golden ticket to be successful later on, and a skill that's going to be just necessary for kids in the future.
Yeah, I am coining that phrase. CS is an equalizing tool. Jeremy, I think you we interrupted.
I can comment on that. I mean, it's a challenge because from a school district perspective, they're inundated right now with challenges, and not everything can be a priority. So how do you sit from the computer science side and continue to advocate, but also know that there's a lot going on? I hope the discussion can move to it's not a either or, but I think that is also about where does it sit in the priority level for districts. I think a concern that I would have, and a thing that probably any teacher here or school is thinking about, is in terms of responding right now, how do you make sure it's a step forward and not a step backward? Because if with everything that's going on and schools are trying to figure out how they return in person and they drop some of these things that were moving them ahead, that's something that doesn't close the gap, that widens the gap. I think a different angle that I think is worth considering as you're making the case, and just from our company perspective, is we already do distributed work and remote work. And I think that's coming to the forefront in terms of working in the pandemic. And so that has an analogy to how does it work in schools. But I think the other component is, how do you do computer science virtually? And what does that mean if you're studying computer science and want to go into it professionally, that's actually something that can be done remotely more easily than so many other jobs. And I think that's an element when people think about, and you're saying, oh, how do you contribute to the local economy? I don't think we're there yet, but I hope, as you say, hey, a lot more students can learn coding, can learn computer science, they can apply it. There is a local entrepreneurship level to it where you can stay wherever you are and work and access the whole global economy by working remotely, which computer science, I think, enables more so than so many other things. So I think that's the angle, which is a little later on, but something that I would bring in as a pretty persuasive argument as well about prioritizing it, that hey, the remote work, virtual learning, that's the digital world that we're moving into. So how do you adapt? But I hope it doesn't get to either or. So I think that's a real challenge.
Yeah, I would agree. I do think that there will still be some element of distance learning or some combination, right, of face-to-face and remote teaching and learning, that we need to help not just students understand or get used to that and make it meaningful teaching and learning. We need to help teachers also.
Right.
And support them through that transition and that mode of teaching and learning. Suffice it to say, I'm knocking on wood, it may be easier for teachers who are teaching computer science to make that transition. It may not be, whatever the case is. We need to be able to come with that thought in mind that we need to support our teachers in the best way possible to be able to teach and learn in different modes. So, Hal, I didn't mean to leave you out.
No, certainly there's some short-term challenges, and making sure that children have some education versus no education, I think, is top priority, whether that's computer science, mathematics, or English language arts. So we've got some short-term problems that definitely need to be addressed, but hopefully the virus runs its course and we can get kind of back to a new normal. From a personal standpoint, I tend to think a little more longer term, and have been doing some soul searching and reflecting about the institutional racism and how is education part of the problem, part of the solution. in the long term. And you know, for me, this is partly what motivates me, is that we can use education, as Jannie said, as the great equalizer. You've got to think long term, right? It's not going to be a quick fix, but within a generation or two, how can we, quote, fix education for all students, especially students in the South, to be able to have access to these modern day skills and put them on a new course and a new trajectory for their lives that maybe they're being denied access to today. And it starts with, we've got to get these courses into the schools. We've got to get the teachers trained, which is, you know, part of why we're all here today. Is the students aren't going to learn if the adults in the equation aren't prepared to help them.
Yeah, great statement. I agree. We've been increasingly concerned with the equity for teachers. Really, we're always concerned about equity for students, but we need equity for teachers as well. They need the support and, you know, the necessary tools to be successful as teachers. What I'd like to do, Hal, Jeremy, and Jannie, is to bring Brian back on stage. He has been curating and organizing some questions that have been coming through the chat. And so he'll help us with those questions. If we can bring him back on stage, that would be great. We've gotten a lot of questions in the chat. I've been trying to, you know, keep up with some of those questions. I think I can start with one of them. This one's from Rich Kick. He says, we have approximately 22% Hispanic students in his school. He teaches in Newbury Park High School in California, but a much smaller percentage in computer science classes, unfortunately. What steps could he take, or what steps would be most effective in increasing participation with Hispanic students?
Call me. Call me. When I mentioned earlier about the work that we do at NCWIT being providing resources that are based on social science research, we know of the power of role models. You have to, and the phrase has been repeated over and over, you know, you can't be what you can't see. So providing those role models like TECHNOLOchicas. So that's why I'm saying, call me. We'll get some TECHNOLOchicas ambassadors out to your school to speak to your students, to get them excited and motivated. It's one of the ways in which you can do it. But also kind of, you know, things like do a scan in your room. What does your physical space look like? Is it welcoming to all students? You know, that's a practical tip that you can implement. But also, I would say check out our massive list of resources at ncwit.org on how to recruit, retain, and promote or increase the participation of underrepresented populations in computing in your computing courses.
Can I add to that too, of making sure that we're starting with young children to feed the pipeline? You know, there's so much great data from NCWIT and the National Girls Collaborative Project that talks about if we don't get the students in the pipeline early, it's so much more difficult to try to get them to enter in the later years, or, you know, especially in post-secondary. So yeah. Part of it is thinking holistically about how do you scaffold students up from an early age and then progress them through.
Right. One other thing that we have on our site is we've been building a lot more interdisciplinary computer science curriculum resources. And so if a step before getting students to enroll in a full class is maybe they can try it out in another class, and you can make some of those resources available to other teachers just to expose more students who might then consider taking a full class.
And things like the Hour of Code is a great way to get introduced at any age. You know, just try it for an hour, and you know, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, we have Brian back on stage now. Brian, can you help us with some of these other questions? I know.
I saw one from Leonardo Alvarez. He just wanted to know from each presenter what they're reading over the summer to prepare for the fall. You know, he says, always curious to see what ebooks, books, blogs, etc., those in the forefront of IT movement are reading at the moment. I know Hal has been quoting people all day. Who are you quoting, Hal? What's going on?
So I'm reading a book right now called The Black Swan. And it talks about data and the idea that if all you've ever seen are white swans, you assume that all swans are white. And then the minute you see a black swan, it's like, oh my gosh, all of your hypotheses are now thrown out the window. I will say so far, it has not been an easy read. The author, I think, is not a highly complex technically, the way he writes, but that's currently what's on I'm actively reading, but my side table is just full of books, unfortunately. You can see a little bit here.
Recommendation for teachers over the summer. What would you say?
That author, Taleb, also has a good book called Fooled by Randomness on similar topics. And I think for people looking for data books, those are interesting. I'm currently reading, it's called How to Be Anti-Racist. I think it's a learning moment for myself. So that's what I'm reading. I haven't shared this one yet, but I am writing a book and it should be published this year. And
nice.
It's a CS education book. It's called Read, Write, Code. It's, basics of coding and why it's a foundational skill. So it's an editing, and it might not be ready for the fall, but I hope it could be a useful book for many teachers on this conference. And then in terms of blogs, we put up a lot. This one I would recommend. It's a blog that we have, but I think it connects. It's called codinginthewild.com, and it shows connections of people using computer science across various fields. And so our goal is to compile people from all backgrounds, all industries, and we do like a little interview with them, either as a blog post or as a podcast. And they'll share, hey, here's how I'm using coding in healthcare. Here's how I'm using it in music. So we probably have 20 or 25, but we'd love to get more. It's a really cool connection, definitely worth checking out. And if you or someone you know wants to contribute or knows someone who has, we want to get people from various backgrounds, because I think, like Jannie said, the visibility of, who you're seeing is important. So that's what we want to have contributing to that blog, but that's codinginthewild.com if you want to check that out.
Thank you.
Sounds interesting.
Well, I'll share, over the course of the month of May, NC Wood hosted Conversations for Change, and we had just a range of speakers that were extremely inspirational, thought-provoking, exciting, and we closed off with what I found just so extremely exciting was Jane Goodall. We did our last conversation was with her, and she has her book right now, Reason for Hope. I think it's what's sitting on my side table that I'm ready to crack open. But I think that the work that we do is so important, and I find that for me personally, finding sources for continuing to stay engaged and motivated it's really important. So that's what's sitting next to me right now that I'm probably going to pick up this week.
Excellent.
And CS teaching tips is, I don't know if that's been mentioned throughout the week, but CS teaching tips is a nice go-to resource. And she's got some dedicated cards and tips about equality and diversity.
I have it on the Godot site for computer science on the side. I think it's excellent.
We are way over our time, and I thank you for staying on with us. And there are plenty of other questions that have come through the chat, and what we've been letting our teachers know is that they are able to, if we didn't get to their questions, they can send them directly to us via chat, or to you all if you can stay on for a couple of minutes, to give you all a chance perhaps to reply via the chat. And if you are willing to share your contact information, we're happy to help share that, or you can post it on the chat so that they can also contact you if they'd like to, if it's okay for them to follow up with you directly. Again, I just want to say thank you for coming on with us this morning. We truly appreciate your perspectives, but more than that, I have been in awe of the work that you all have been doing for so long. We've been in this together for a long time, and I do see that we've come a long way, that we have made progress. But I also know that we all know there's still so much more work to do. And I hope that we can stay connected. Brian and I have been talking about building out more cohesive and comprehensive partnerships and collaboration and collaborative work. This whole notion of, like Hal was talking about, collective impact, is something we really need to dig deeper into, and connect, cast a wider net and connect with more organizations so that we can all be aligned in our work, and doing this together. Any last comments from our panelists, Hal, Jeremy, or Jannie?
No, I would say thank you for allowing us some time here to share our thoughts or insight or experiences. I'm going to drop my email on the chat. So anybody that's tuned in, if they want to reach out directly to learn more about our resources, programs, feel free to send an email.
Yeah, just be an agent for change. Right? It takes a village, and you will get through this, but everybody has a role to play.
Yeah, I want to say thank you as well. Thanks, Lynn, Brian, for organizing this and for what you're doing for computer science in Georgia. And thanks to all the teachers attending this. I think it's a time of rapid adapting. So we're all rapidly adapting to virtual events, virtual teaching. So thanks for having us today. And we're always looking for feedback at CodeHS, so you can always contact us, and we'll share our info. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you all very much for a great session.
Appreciate you all coming.
Thank you.